Good morning. Good morning, please. Have a seat. We are going to start, and General Delgado is going to introduce the lecture we have now. Thank you.
Brigadier General Denk, good to have you. Allow me a few phrases in order to introduce you and stay with us, please. Marshals, Commodore, Sergeant Generals, Brigadiers, military comrades all, ladies and gentlemen, streamers of all kinds, it's a pleasure joining you again this morning. As you know, I am Brigadier General José María Delgado, Chief of the Joint Health Defense Staff of the Kingdom of Spain. I highly recommend to focus on Brigadier General Denk lecture. I do guarantee that a whole world of bright reflections will pop up somewhere inside your minds. I'm honored to let you know that Brigadier General André Eric Denk is ready to take over right on the air as the main actor of working together in coordinating military support to civilian authorities. Needless to say that a proper SIP-MIL coordination is somewhere a mixture of deep knowledge of the raw material you are dealing with, a pinch of magic, sort of fairies fooling around, making the improbable possible, and all this paired with the wine of past experience that hopefully will leave a good taste. Brigadier General André Eric Denk is Chief of the European Military Staff, Logistic Division. For those of you, happily or sadly, who knows, unaware of the complex realm of the European Union institution, I got a secret to be revealed just for your understanding. European military staff is a military structure that plays its roles at the strategic level. It serves both as an advising and planning authority within the European Union External Action Service. Therefore, takes part in the establishment of the European Union strategic guidelines for a lot of operations such as Lanta, Sofia, TEA, among others. The unusual but foreseeable state generated by COVID pandemic disease showed the broad range in which the armed forces contributes to the civilian authorities. Not only in the standard military operation core side, but in many other emergency, disaster, crisis situations where military means and capabilities unfold in support of the population. Brigadier General Denk, this place from where I'm giving you the warmest welcome to the Congress is the Higher Center for National Defense Studies, known as CESEDEN by the Spanish acronym. The website introductory welcome of CESEDEN exhibits a singular mindset based upon 4 pillars: satisfy past and present curiosity, projecting ideas for the future to come, adopt new technologies and approaches to the learning process, adapt narrative to changing scenarios and new facts, but always, always keeping the founding spirit of service and promotion of a common SIP-MIL culture of defense and security. What a fantastic bunch of words to revitalize and fill with new contexts under the light of recent events: curiosity, adopt, adapt, service, SIP-MIL culture. European Union military staff, making the most of the learned lessons after COVID, has produced during the last month a solid documental body about requirements needed to coordinate military support to civilian authorities, aiming at a reliable activation process and adequate mission execution. As far as this Congress is concerned, 4 final remarks, General. A little bit of showing off on achievements is allowed. A lot of courage upon future projects and demands require. Fortify common position is always mandatory. And unfortunately, there will be no questions from the floor because of a time schedule. And now, without any further ado, Brigadier General Denk, screen and floor are yours. Thank you.
Yes, good morning from Brussels to all of you, and thank you for having me. Thank you very much indeed for your kind introduction and for already taking 50% of my presentation. So I hope you hear me well. I am Brigadier General André Denk, German Army, Director Logistics in the EU Military Staff. In the next 30 minutes or so, I will brief you on the EU military staff perspective on working together in coordinating military support to civilian authorities. Let me first of all convey warm greetings from the Director General of the EU military staff, Vice Admiral Hervé Bléjean, who is my boss and whom I have the pleasure to stand in for. I'd like to start my presentation by explaining very quickly who we are and what we do. And I'd like to draw your particular attention to the Strategic Compass, an upcoming new basic document. I will then share with you some considerations about national and bilateral CivMil cooperation and, of course, the EU perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU military staff is part of the European External Action Service. That was said already, a kind of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the EU. The High Representative Vice President, Mr. Borrell, is at the top of the EEAS, the European External Action Service. And just to give you some figures, the EEAS consists of about 4,500 people, and the EU military staff, a small part of it, we are 230. But the EU military staff is the unique source of military expertise within the EU institutions. We provide military advice and support to the HRVP, Mr. Borrell, and we support the activities of the EU Military Committee. We are to perform early warning, situational assessment, and strategic planning in the framework of CSDP, Common Security and Defense Policy. Currently, the EU is conducting 3, soon 4 non-executive military missions, which are EU training mission in Mali, Central African Republic and Somalia, soon also in Mozambique, and 3 operations, Althea in Bosnia, and the 2 maritime operations, Irini and Atalanta. Other EU military staff tasks include concept and capabilities development, as well as support to civilian CSDP missions and operations. Currently, the EU military staff is contributing to draft the so-called Strategic Compass. This paper will complement the EU Global Strategy from 2016 and will be ready in March 2022 during the French presidency of the Council. The Strategic Compass offers the opportunity to define more precisely our EU military level of ambition and what it implies for crisis management, resilience, capability development, and partnerships. In short, the Strategic Compass tries to answer 2 questions. Firstly, what should the EU be able to do? And secondly, what is needed to get there? The EU military staff, by the way, has very good relations to other EU institutions like the Commission, and I would like to mention here DG ECHO, so DG for European Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Operations, or DG Santé, DG for Health and Food Safety. They are well aware, you are well aware of them. Now, turning to the subject of my lecture, what is happening in Europe? We all know the EU is expected to experience more extreme events and increasing damage, as well as exposure and vulnerability to disasters. For instance, climate change is bringing along more extreme weather events, sea level rise, and also changes in the geographical distribution of infectious diseases. Southern and Central Europe are seeing more frequent heat waves, droughts, and forest fires. There were various wildfires during the summer in Spain, and I remember well only a few weeks ago at the Costa del Sol. Northern and Central Europe are getting extreme weathers and floods, and although flooding this July in Germany, Belgium, and Netherlands was due to the effect of exceptional heavy rainfall, it might also be a picture seen more often in future. Well, the sudden onset of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020, which surprised the governments and overwhelmed the national health systems, was another worldwide occurrence which sets new measures for all of us. With the closing of national borders, the limitations in the public domain, and additional limitations for individuals, many people realized that there are still scenarios possible which will challenge our way of life and will have a major impact on how we perceive threats. You all are fully aware of these developments. We have to be prepared that we will see more catastrophes in future. So how did we react to the pandemic? The recent events indeed showed that the military is a very relevant partner on national level. In almost all European countries, armed forces have been activated soon to support civilian authorities in countering the pandemic. We all still recall vividly the situation of March and April last year with the COVID-19 pandemic unfolding and the military being called upon in great numbers to support the civilian authorities to cope with the impact of the virus. It was perhaps the biggest peacetime mobilization of the armed forces since the Cold War, perhaps even since World War II. Military health professionals and other military personnel were made available to support the national systems. So almost all member states have a role of their armed forces as a permanent partner to civilian authorities, either as pre-planned backup or as last resort. Against this backdrop, it is absolutely crucial to have clear arrangements in place for effective prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery from disasters. And of course, you need to exercise it frequently and on a regular basis. It is definitely mandatory to examine now to what extent specific military capabilities are potentially useful in future. And that is not only applicable at the national level, but also at EU institution level. So the question is, what happened on bilateral basis and where does the European Union come into the ballgame? It is absolutely clear to me that member states have and will keep the primary responsibility and authority for the health protection of their citizens and their healthcare systems. As already said, they are responsible for emergency or contingency plans to surge the civilian healthcare system with military health professionals. During the COVID-19 pandemic, some member states experienced a shortage of ICU beds, equipment, and specific trained personnel, even though military capabilities were involved. What we could see was a huge wave of solidarity and bilateral support between EU member states. Examples were the transfer of Dutch and French intensive care patients to Germany. Austria received intensive care patients from Italy. Malta donated medical and protective equipment to Croatia. Latvia supported Spain with more than 10,000 bottles of disinfect and protective equipment, and so on and so forth. Now, beside the national responsibility and these bilateral arrangements, the EU can and has an important role to play in improving public health, preventing and managing diseases, mitigating sources of danger to human health, and harmonizing health strategies between member states. This is outside my remit, but I would like to draw your attention to this because it had significant impact during the COVID-19 pandemic. You know that since 2001, there has been an existing mechanism where member states can request support through the Commission. The so-called Union Civil Protection Mechanism, UCPM, consists of arrangements which are supported, coordinated, and partly funded by DG ECHO. Through DG Santé, cooperation between member states and the Commission led to common procurement of vaccines and PPE equipment, as well as plans to looking further ahead. This gave way to current developments to enhance the capacity of the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, ESDC, and the creation of HERA, the Health Emergency Preparedness and Response Authority. And I know you have talked about it already during the week. These plans reflect the progress the member states have made while realizing that some aspects might be more effective when coordinated on EU level, but still in close control and oversight of the member states, including sharing of information and national plans. Now, what was the role of the EU institutions in the civilian, military, medical cooperation? At the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, that was in early 2020, April 2020, the ministers of defense from Germany and France wrote to the High Representative, Mr. Borrell, asking for establishing a task force or a corona coordination staff, which would serve as an EU coordination and steering element to the situation centers and crisis staffs at MOD's levels, so at level of the ministries of defense. Member states felt a need to raise the awareness about the pandemic, to learn from each other, and where necessary, also to explore coordination and mutual support with help from the EU level. In follow-up to the exchange of views held in early April 2020 between the EU defense ministers on the impact of the COVID-19 crisis in the defense sector, the HRVP tasked the European External Action Service to set up an internal task force. By the way, it consisted of a part of EEAS SecDefPol, of the EU military staff, and strategic communications. The task force was to temporarily support and facilitate information exchange on national military assistance in support of civilian authorities to help fight the coronavirus pandemic. So information exchange. The main tool was the creation of an online platform, CIP, Common Information Sharing Platform, accessible to all member states through nominated points of contacts, as well as to DG ECHO. The task force, in conjunction with this platform, with the CIP, provided transparency on national military assistance to civilian actors, including lessons learned and best practices. In order to give you an idea about the inputs provided by the member states to the CIP, let me give you just some examples. Some member states informed about the support to the health sector, firstly by provision of medical equipment like ventilators, military laboratories, including mobile ones, and personal protective equipment. Secondly, by provision and operation of military field hospitals. Role 2, medical treatment facilities, including medical beds, intensive care beds, and quarantine tents. And thirdly, by disinfection of equipment, buildings, vehicles, whatsoever, by specialized CBRN defense units. Other member states provided input by sharing best practice on, for instance, air and land transportation of equipment, supplies and food in support of central and local authorities, on setting up of national logistics hubs, on carrying out evacuation missions and repatriation of EU member state citizens with military air and land assets. So both the task force and the SIP turned out to be useful supporting tools, and I can only advise you to have a look to this online platform. However, we have to remain honest. This was an ad hoc solution where member states uploaded information in a non-formatted and, let's say, less structured manner. It was a first attempt, and it deserves further analysis and considerations. Separately, but somehow related to this, the EU military staff provided support to the Commission, to DG ECHO, as regards the use of military assets of member states under the Union Civil Protection Mechanism and for humanitarian assistance purposes. The activation of the EU Movement Planning Cell within my directorate, the Logistics Directorate, in early May 2020, at the request of DG ECHO, has to be mentioned here, as this cell coordinated the member states' offers of military transport assets in support of pandemic-related humanitarian assistance. Ladies and gentlemen, let me come to my conclusion. At national level, the coordination and cooperation between civilian and military authorities in crisis situations have proven to be indispensable. This cooperation could be either structural as part of contingency plans or ad hoc. In a crisis as given with COVID-19, the options of a stronger cooperation and collaboration are well acknowledged and appreciated on both sides. However, making use of this connection requires political will and especially knowledge and training how to use those capabilities and resources in the most effective way. The alignment and cooperation within the national systems could set an excellent example so that those positive experience and lessons learned can then be promoted also to the EU level. That is, by the way, why I'm very grateful for the invitation to this conference, and Wouter van Dele and Christiane Scheller, medical advisors of the EU military staff, are currently attending your conference in presence in Madrid. The model of the ad hoc EEAS EU military staff task force for COVID-19 should be preserved and further developed for future emergencies, also with a stronger involvement of the Commission to ensure proper coordination with the primary European Disaster Response Authority. Its future tasks might also include providing support to the coordination, so not only information of military assets in assisting civilian authorities. And I'm very happy to see the full support of the MMCC EMC Koblenz in our future conceptual considerations. Ladies and gentlemen, military support to civilian authorities in disaster situations is the last resort. However, real life proves that it is indispensable, and we need to be prepared on a national, bilateral, and on the EU level. That is the task ahead of us. Thank you for your attention. This concludes my presentation.
So, General, on behalf of the Congress Committee and the audience, I do thank you for the lecture, and we hope to see you soon, as many times as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Good trip home.
Alberto Hernández Abadía is going to do a resume of our Congress. Thank you.
Congreso en general. Marshal, Commodore, Generals, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm General Abadia. My present assignment is in the Health Inspectorate, Spanish Military One, and I'm in charge right now about, with our medical support and evaluation branch. My aim right now is to summarize a little bit, to make a refreshment about the different conclusions of the so very interesting presentation we have attended. And at the end of this, is open to final remarks or comments from you. I'll try to be brief, but not quick, okay? Don't hesitate, the coffee is waiting for us later on. We'll begin with some conclusions from our Surgeon General. I would like to remark. I'm going to read it because I think it's quite important. We must work to enhance the military health services cooperation, reflecting on our structure and organization. I think it's common for many different presentations that we have attended these days. The intervention of the armed forces in the pandemic was planned and carried out following the usual operational planning procedures, quite important also. In HSNDF, our health inspectorate was activated to provide health protection to our armed forces in homeland and abroad, and to provide also health support to civilian authorities. It's also has been our observation very common to all the different countries attending this Congress. So on, the health support demand by civilian authorities not always matches the health support capabilities the armed forces prepare for in their operations. We should consider options to improve planning currently with the authorities supported, especially with the civilian ones, try to know how to work all together in the best manner as much as possible. It has become evidence that the production and supply of medicines, health products in general, laboratory tests, etc., are not fully controlled by states. I want to remind all the lacks at the beginning for the first wave that we suffer, and I think it has been very common to all of us also. I would also to take in mind the marvelous presentation from General COVID. We miss him, but we were very fortunate to have him on video teleconference. His presentation, titled Combining Efforts in Medical Support in Europe, was at the beginning was a presentation of the European Medical Command, MCC for NATO also, Rhodes Mission Organization, and with all concept that nowadays is really, really important. Medical situational awareness for Europe. Common operational picture. We have been talking about this concept for years, but if we have to get hurried sometimes into apply this for us, this could be a very good moment. And here let us take a message with the main concepts. Nexus of health and security. Health is a main part of our security. As a result of the COVID crisis, scarcity of resources. I think that all of us, in different aspects, we have suffered this also. Increasing cross-border health emergencies, not only by COVID-19, you know, and could be, we have to be ready for the next one, are coming. And requirement for more cooperation. Could be, this is the main commitment. Well, I would like to go into now the first round table under the title, Military Support for the Establishment of European Strategic Reserve of a Strategic Medical Stockpile Against Pandemics. Critical. First point, strategic stockpiles of medical and countermeasures are handled by the armed forces. COVID-19 pandemic has shown the need to enhance capability at EU levels, not only country level, national levels, I want to mean. Importance and complexity of capability building on healthcare resources prepared for a future pandemic. Well, could be the next pandemic will be in the 22nd century. Well, I would like to remind all of us, the SARS, the MERS, the SARS-CoV-2 was the next. For the single command system has proven to be an effective approach for planning and conducting medical support operation. It has been very graphical that in the different presentation for the experience of the different countries during the Congress, all of us, we have followed in a military way to have a common command to everyone. We have to think about an European common command probably for the next pandemic we have to face or any other medical or health threat. It's necessary that military medical service closely cooperate with civilian authorities. No more comment on this. Strategic stockpile, critical issues as industrial production, capability, availability of raw materials, and the nature and quantities of the stocked products. We have to assume the custody of the national strategic reserves. Absolutely. Our governments is one of the tasks that has assumed to us, not only in a security way, in a technical one, and the future is going to be in a greater scale. Personal protection equipments and intensive care unit assets are critical resources. It has been during COVID-19, will be in the future. I have the opportunity to be deployed in our Central Hospital of Defense in the intensive care unit because I'm intensivist. And mechanical ventilation, all of you know, was the border many times for saving lives or not. It was a critical lack that unfortunately we can solve. And I think for the future, we have to keep these resources activated in a first line response. And also the medical personnel trained and prepared for facing these threats. All the stockpile of medicine and medical resources should relate to risk analysis considering that these are dynamic processes. The largest scale public health incidents with an identified agent required sending a broad spectrum of medical resources to the front line. Comparing our international deployments abroad in the different operations and missions, we face the COVID-19 crisis, the first wave I want to mean right now, just in our national territories. It was a new experience for us, I think that all of us here, we have experience on international deployments, but at least for me, it was the first time working at home. It's different, but the noise is better. We have to face many troubles, but we have a very good advantage from international operations. Could be the supply and the support on real time. We are playing at home, but when the scarcity is for everybody, this is another input to take in account. Sustaining strategic stockpiles involves managing the entire life cycle of the different resources and a solid life extension program, of course. The obsolescence of medical devices is critical. Technology goes on very, very fast, and the providers, it's difficult to keep alive when our medical equipment, especially for advanced life support, more than 10 years. All the different spare parts and the repairments have to be alive to maintain alive this equipment. Effective training programs to provide the necessary resources at the right place at the right time. Absolutely critical. The second round table, operational challenges in the state of safety, including the military medical support for EU missions and operations, adjustment, and lessons learned. I'm going to show all the different presentations, but I'm only going to pop up one of the key points forever because it's not going to be too long. The first one, the choice for unpreparedness. It's very impressive, at least for me, that COVID-19 has shown that total unpreparedness is a conscious choice that bears consequences. Today, uncertainty cannot justify unpreparedness. It's our commitment. Second presentation, contribution of military medical service, the national strategic plan against COVID-19, the LENIC National Defense General Staff experience. There were some concepts that I would like to highlight. The vulnerability of our society war for a biological threat. That's true. Need of early, attuned and generally compatible guidelines within NATO and EU in order to avoid duplication, redundancy. The value of effective cooperation between all stakeholders, military, civilian, governmental, and the private sector also. Need for telehealth development and interoperability, absolutely. Need to adapt within the scientific uncertainty. Yesterday afternoon, we attended a brilliant table about vaccination. We are now in the phase 4 of our vaccines, and the real success we are life is today. Spain is today around 50 of accumulated incidents of COVID-19 cases. Was only past July, I think we were in the same figures, but it's due absolutely by the vaccination. I think it's absolutely historical, and I'm sure that all of you agree on it, that the world has able to develop this vaccine in a very short time, and there are many saved lives all around the world due to this. Assistance provided by the Bundeswehr. The administrative assistance provided by qualified specialist personnel is increasing at the expense of the original task of the Bundeswehr, excuse me for the pronunciation, medical service, and produces displacement effects. New tax, new commitments, we have to adapt to evolutionate as the demands we receive from our societies. COVID prevention measures to operations. The availability of vaccines since January 2021 has been undoubtedly a turning point, allowing the progressive relaxation of remaining measures, primarily pre-deployment and post-deployment quarantines. I want to remark also how these kind of measures compromise also our tactical security measures. Sometimes it's not so easy to associate both measures, and the compromise we have identified many lessons that probably we will convert into lessons learned for future deployments, and this is one of them. And also, it can be concluded that the measures implemented have made it possible to control the occurrence of outbreaks and the impact on operations. Number 5, lessons identifying CSDP operations and missions, dividing in field on duty of care and field of civilian military cooperation and coordination. Many lessons identified that we have to transform in lesson learned for the next future, take for sure, operations, and mission. For the second round table, CIMIC, innovation to crisis, the civil-military cooperation leads to a win-win situation for all participating entities and allows their interest to cooperate and innovate in a crisis. I think we have also learned, or at least identified, lessons for our civilian colleagues, but I'm sure they have identified many lessons from our way to work, our deployment, and it's good. It's good to know to each other, I want to mean, generally speaking, for future commitments. The use of Slovak mobile field hospital in home country support during COVID-19 pandemic deals with the roles of Slovak military medical service during COVID-19 pandemic. If I ask you to kind of have your hands that who has not been related with the different military health deployments against COVID-19, no one of you is going to hand your hands, absolutely. In this way, the common threats that we have to face is good to share here our different experience to learn to each other. And I think it's quite good to receive the experience from our friends, our neighbors, to learn from them also. Mass testing for SARS-CoV-2 in Slovakia. The aim of this paper is to address challenges to maximize effectiveness and pathways to create an effective collaborative environment during planning and execution of a mass testing rollout. This was one of the main tasks that all of us we have suffered, and to face a whole country in this way has to be a big task. Put to the test. Development of a COVID-19 testing capacity to ensure Belgian interoperability, The outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic raised the need to develop a new testing capacity in Belgium to monitor the pandemic and to keep the spread of the virus to a minimum. Lessons learned from the investigation of COVID-19 cluster in Creil, France. Due to the limited testing capacity available in France at the time, they elaborated on a testing strategy according to pretest probability. New methods to make rapid and good diagnostic. The best way to apply the right treatment at the right moment over the right people. The chemical intoxicated trauma patient, challenge and approaches. A highly mobile but specialized infrastructure that can be brought into theater at short notice is absolutely necessary. Tailored mission, the Flight 2, is managed either by the CBRN specialist or by the senior emergency medical team paramedic and has one objective: saving the life of the chemical intoxicated trauma patient by first treating with symptoms is more deadly. Can be CBRN or trauma. Yes, I agree absolutely. Our case-missed patients generally in all of our deployments could be the combat trauma patient, but moreover, is contaminated in any way. I have no experience on it, but I don't want to imagine what can we do, but we have to be ready for it. Third round table, military support to European vaccination plan against pandemics. 3 main ideas. Support to national health system has made armed forces positively visible to society. Military professionals constantly stand by the Spanish population, our experience. Civilian military cooperation requires full coordination. Having met with health counselors, autonomous regions have been paramount been working with the Ministry of Health. Military medical personnel have once again shown preparedness to support the population. Thank goodness. From Belgium, mistakes have been avoided thanks to well-defined process and good tracking of the vials, critical. Also, Belgium suggests to study possibly synergies among nations when the deployments are common for several countries. Critical point also. From France, French Military Health Service has conducted early vaccination of deployed personnel to fulfill their operational medical support. Absolutely. The French Military Health Service has also supported the national vaccination campaign by vaccinating French population. It has shown the reaction has been agile to the needs of the national system and have shown the importance of civilian military cooperation. Finally, from Spain, when planning a vaccination campaign, it is important to take into consideration the psychological aspects in order to face perception and belief of the population or health issue. As much people we have vaccinated, stronger we are. The change of the law which enables the indication and administration of vaccines to military nurses has allowed those professionals to face a mass vaccination campaign unprecedented in our history. Yeah. Nurses have been the cornerstone for the vaccine to reach the majority of the population in record time. And military nurses have followed the same line within the armed forces, an historical event, and also in civilian military cooperation. My last conclusion, allow me to give you my personal impression. Ubi Concordia, ibi Victoria. This is our commitment. I love the presentation from General Death. That's the way. That's the line. And I hope that we will ready for the next challenge. Thank you for being an attentive audience. And now is your turn, please, for final remarks, comments, no questions. Es todo, mi general. Perhaps I've been so clear that it's not necessary any additional comment. Well, I think it's coffee break now. Let's go for the coffee break. Thank you very much, you all.
Please do take seat. We're going to start the closing ceremony. After the closing ceremony finishes, there will be a photographer in the entrance, in the main entrance. We would like to have a family picture of all of us in the stairs. That we will distribute it later. And there it will also be possible to have a photo call of all the delegations if you want a particular pictures of you and with your friends and all your colleagues. And at 12 o'clock, there's the farewell cocktail. So we have 1 hour for the pictures. Mi general, con su permiso.
Good morning, generals, commodore, sirs, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Ministry of Defense and the Undersecretary of Defense, and on my own, thank you very much for your participation in the first European Union Congress on Military Air Service. And congratulations for these 3 days of excellent work. First, I would like to share with you a feeling. We are lucky because we have been able to join in this room despite the difficult situation we have had to overcome, even around us or in our own families. I would like to have a memory for the victim of the COVID-19. To make this possible, however, the luck is not enough. I must appreciate the good work done by the organizing committee, represented by the General Alberto Pérez Romero, and the help given in the previous days to the Congress by General Alejandro Samanillo. Thank you and congratulations to all your team. Thank you and congratulations too to the participants in the different panels of the Congress. It has been an extensive and intensive participation with rich commentaries. Thanks to the Scientific Committee, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, the Military Emergency Unit, the interpreters, Maria and Conchi, support personnel, as well as I thank very much the hospitality of the Higher Study School and the support of the Joint Staff, the Undersecretary of Defense, the Defense Policy Secretariat, and many other people and organisms. Thank you, Colonel Encinas. It has been a pleasure, a satisfaction, and an honor your presence in this Congress, sharing experience and knowledge from the COVID-19 pandemic. We recognize the effort made for our colleagues from Europe to come from your country to the Congress. Thank you very much. We hope that you have enjoyed and have had a good time, a good stay in Madrid. It is said that the host only lays on the table, but the magic appears when the guests come. That is why I thank so much the participating nation and organization for coming or attending online. For all of us, it has been more than a year and a half working very hard in the management of the crisis, and your generous contribution to make this meeting worthwhile has been an unforgettable sign of partnership and friendship. Perhaps the most pronounced words these 3 days has been cooperation, collaboration, coordination, in concordance with the Congress lemma, the phrase of the Congress, ubi concordia, ibi victoria. Where there is collaboration, there is victory. And this is the first of 2 ways. Ubi concordia, ibi victoria among us. We have verified that we share our vision and values and the close partners we are. I am very happy and satisfied, and I have enjoyed too much with the presentation, the question, and the debates. The first European Union Congress on Military Air Service, celebrated in Spain, for me has been a success. But it wouldn't have been a complete success if any European country don't take the initiative to organize in the next few years the second edition. The word first is an invitation to keep alive this forum in any of the formats available in the 21st century, in person or online. So please, let me have a second wish. I look forward to see you soon in the second European Congress on Military Air Service. In any case, we have verified once more the importance of the relation among our nations through our personal relationship, and for that, this kind of events are essential. I declare closes the first European Congress on Military Air Service. Have a good trip at home. Thank you very much.